and welcome everyone. I'm Catherine Barnett. It is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Chillicothe Public Library to tonight's presentation, Change Our Language, Change Our Politics, an Illinois Humanities Rhodes Scholars Speakers Bureau event with Ted Williams III. Before we get started today, I do have a few housekeeping items. If you hover over the Zoom screen, you'll see a series of tools at the bottom. To view automated closed captioning, please click on the closed captioning live transcript icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen and select Show Subtitles. If you wish to hide the subtitles, click the icon and select Hide Subtitle. You can click on Chat to comment or interact with each other. Tonight, we are going to be talking about some challenging and sometimes controversial topics, and we want everyone to be able to honestly share their thoughts and questions. That said, if a topic comes up that you feel strongly about, please do practice what we're learning in this session and keep all comments civil and respectful. You can submit questions through the Q&A tool or click the raise hand tool to let us know that you have a question that you'd like to ask verbally, and we'll enable you to unmute so that you can ask it. If you're on Facebook, feel free to drop comments and questions in that comment section, and I will do my best to translate them here onto Zoom. If you are on Facebook and would like to join us on Zoom, I did share the registration link, so you can just register real quick on there, check your email, and you should have the link there to join us here on Zoom. Tonight's program is being recorded, and the recording will be available to view on the library's Facebook page and YouTube channel. I mentioned earlier that this is an Illinois Humanities Rhodes Scholars Speakers Bureau event. The mission of Illinois Humanities is to strengthen the social, political, and economic fabric of Illinois through constructive conversation and civic engagement. The Rhodes Scholars Speakers Bureau supports that mission by inviting Illinois authors, artists, and scholars to share their expertise and enthusiasm with people and communities throughout our state. After this event, we hope you'll complete the audience feedback survey, which will help Illinois Humanities as they plan future programs and seek support for their work. To learn about other Rhodes Scholars presentations, other Illinois Humanities programs, and their grant opportunities, please visit www.illinoishumanities.org. And I'm just going to share that link here in the chat. We hope you enjoy the presentation, and it is now my honor to introduce our presenter. Ted Williams III is a speaker, performing artist, and college educator, currently on faculty at the City Colleges of Chicago. He has hosted and served as a guest expert on multiple radio and television platforms and as the host of online periodicals. He has authored 2 musical productions, including 1619, The Journey of a People, which was funded by the Illinois Arts Council and nominated for the 2020 August Wilson Award for Best Writing of Musical by the Black Theater Alliance Awards. He is also the author of The Way Out, Christianity, Politics, and the Future of the African American Community. Ted is a former candidate for the Chicago City Council and an expert at reaching audiences with a dynamic message of civic engagement, personal transformation, and hope. Ted Williams III, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone can hear me and that you guys are ready to learn and have some fun tonight. So I have to say this before I even begin speaking tonight. Most of my work is in the space of politics, religion, and the arts. And so I navigate those 3 spaces. So aside from the arts, politics and religion is a horrible, horrible combination if you want to make friends. And so I end up having many conversations, good conversations, and I've learned how to navigate some contentious political waters. They say that those are the 2 things you should never talk about in polite company, and I talk about them every day. And so I hope that you will enjoy this ride, if you will. And I hope that you will not be afraid to participate, to agree and or disagree. That is what happens, and that is okay. One of my I have a set of experiences that include running for office, that include producing theater, and most of my theater is political. And most of people always ask me the question, "How are you an artist and you're into politics as well?" I say, all artists, all politics is art and theater, and all theater is political in some way, shape, or form. There's a message there. And so anyway, so I say all that to say that I am super excited to hop into this with you. I work with college students every day in the City Colleges of Chicago, trying to inspire them to be civically engaged themselves. And so we're going to play a game. I'm going to treat you like I do my college students today. We're going to play a little game, and there will be a test afterwards, and I will be giving out grades. So please make sure that you pay attention. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I look forward to having some Q&A at the end. Please, once again, feel free to engage. I am really looking forward to working with you all tonight. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop in. So tonight's conversation is called Change Your Language, Change Your Politics. If we can change our language or change your language, we really can change our political system. And I think that is such a critical thing. So I want to talk about where we are today. And in order to do that, I want to show you guys a short clip from a documentary. One of my favorite media groups is, and one of my favorite documentary sites and programs is Frontline, a PBS Frontline. I'm sure many of you have watched some of their work. And so I'm going to share a quick trailer from one of their pieces that I think helps us to understand where we are today. And hopefully tonight we'll talk about how we can get out of this situation.
Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States.
I pledge that I will be president for all Americans.
A new president and a deeply divided country.
The Donald Trump presidency is going to be anathema to at least part of the population and greatly welcomed by another part, and those two Americas have been at war with one another, and they're likely to continue to be so.
From Frontline's award-winning political team, the inside story of how we got here.
The Republicans told the members, just say no.
They thought they could ram this right through and to heck with conservatives.
Through 2 terms of a Democratic president.
They had decided we don't need to work with Republicans because we have supermajorities on the Hill.
And the civil war within the Republican Party.
I had members who thought sitting down with the president was a big mistake.
The searing events that drove the country further apart.
The contradiction of this happening in the midst of a black presidency sharpened the irony and intensified the pain.
One of my few regrets is my inability to reduce the polarization in our politics.
One of his biggest disappointments was not being able to bridge that party divide, that toxicity in this town.
And the voters' new choice for change.
Donald Trump is the representation of the anti-Obama.
He was speaking straight to tens of millions of Americans who think that they've been betrayed, not anger, betrayal by Washington.
A Frontline special series.
All right, so this is the Divided States of America series, and I thought was really a great series around this division that we have. And so I want to talk a little about the problem. And I want to talk about where we are when it comes to this issue and this problem. So if you look at data, when you look at data surrounding this question of political ideology and where we are politically, we are increasingly more divided. You may have felt this in your bones, in your spirit, but I'm here to tell you today that it is true. It is verifiable. It is quantifiable. There's data to support that Americans are increasingly either on the left or on the right without really having this mix of positions, this middle of the road, sort of moderate, bipartisan idea or identity. And what you're finding is our political system, our media is really pushing us to the edges on this. And so what happens to the country, right? We recognize that, the country, the idea that we are forever together and that there would be nothing to tear us apart is obviously untrue. We've had a civil war in this country. And we really, if we don't deal with these divisions, if we don't deal with these questions, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very concerned about where we're going. And it's one of the things that I'm sure many of you think about. I think about it a lot in the work that I do. How do we create a nation that works for everyone? And how do we move towards mutual goals, commonality? That is really what this presentation is about. And if you have felt frustrated by where we are, you came to the right place tonight. So here's how Democrats and Republicans in our binary system look at one another. We really have become two hostile tribes, if you will. Republicans heavily believe Democrats to be unintelligent and lazy. Democrats heavily believe Republicans to be closed-minded. And so this is a problem that we have to talk about and we have to deal with. 23% of liberals and 30% of conservatives will be unhappy if an immediate family member married someone who had different political beliefs. We are at the place where these divisions have entered our homes, they've entered our dining rooms, they've entered our bedrooms. How do we get past this, and what do we do? Now, to give you a little background, the country right now is really in this way in terms of party affiliation, is divided. The majority of the country identifies as Democrat in terms of numbers. We know this. We look at the popular vote totals over the last few elections. We know that even going all the way back to 1988, Republicans have not won the majority of votes in the country but twice since that period of time. And yet the Electoral College allows for there to be a balance of power. That means that Democrats get elected president, Republicans elected president. But you look at the numbers, this is where we are, but a growing group is independents, right? And those who are trying to sort of find their way to identify with either party. That doesn't mean, by the way, that they're moderate independents. I mean, independents are extreme independents. You have independents who are libertarian. You have independents who are extremely progressive and do not find a home in either party. And so this is a phenomenon that we're dealing with. Abraham Lincoln said that America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and we lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. I could not believe this to be more true. And so how do we get past this? Now, I've shared all this doom and gloom with you, but I want to play a game. So I probably should have played the game first because now we're all kind of revved up here. And I'm going to play a little intro game with us to just kind of loosen us up and talk a little about the political system, what we know. And then we're going to hop into this question of how do we change our language? How do we change our politics? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a website called Kahoot.it. Now, if you have a secondary device, a phone, or another page on your computer, what you would need to do, you don't have to download anything. All you have to do is go to the website Kahoot.it and type in the game pin, 472-1484. I'll give you guys a few minutes to see if you guys can get in. If we are able to do it technically, we'll go ahead and play it. If we got any challenges, we'll figure that out too. But Kahoot.it, this is a little quiz for you to see what you know about the political system. It's kind of politics 101. And so if you do that on your phone, then you can go ahead and join us. So we'll see if we get anyone in. I'll give you guys a second. I would suggest, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to see if we can get some folks in. I would suggest if you do have a problem doing this, right, if there's any kind of technical challenge, you can always put your answers in the chat box, and that might be fun and easy as well. So I'd love to see some folks on here, but if you can't do that, put your answers in the chat box and we'll be just fine, okay? All right. Okay, we're going to go. I'm going to take these three folks. We got Gennaro, CB, and LS. We're going to start playing because we got a lot to talk about tonight. So we'll see if we can get rolling here. And then everybody else, you can either get in. You can get in late if you want, or you can go ahead and play in the chat box. Okay, so this is basically like, are you smarter than a college shooting game? Or, what do you know about the political process? So let's go ahead and hop in for us. Okay. Okay, all right. This is stuff you all learned in probably 4th grade. And you're saying it's been a long time, Ted. That's okay. That is all right. All right, okay. You can Google these too, by the way, if you want. I mean, you're just gonna have enough time to do it, but there's no penalty for cheating in this game. All right, okay, we're moving in the right direction. All right. Okay, now I think you'll like this question. So we'll see. You know, I think everybody will get this one. Okay, there we go. Okay, this is, you know, my students enjoy this. I hope you guys enjoy that as well. All right, everybody, we're good. Okay, here we go. Oh, I've had students get that one wrong. Jokingly, I hope. All right. All right, congratulations to our winners. Sandy has promised many wonderful, wonderful gifts. Catherine has promised that, Sandy, that right there. So you talk to her afterwards, and I'm sure she'll find something for you. I put you on the spot, Catherine. So I want to talk a little about. Let me give you a little sort of background about myself and why I got into this work and what I'm doing. So this is in 2015. 2015, I made the crazy decision to run for alderman in the city of Chicago, the 9th Ward. The 9th Ward had about 60,000 residents in it. We're the far south side, so 87th Street to the far north, 130th Street to the south, Cottage Grove to the east, Halsted to the west. We have in that ward the historic Pullman district, and now the National Monument for the Pullman area. If you guys know the history of the Pullman Porters, that is there as well. But also a community in which there was a heavy level of poverty, a heavy level of economic inequality. Altgeld Gardens are found there. Altgeld Gardens is a public housing complex in which President Obama really cut his teeth as an organizer. And so we had a lot of issues. And I learned a tremendous amount when I spent months going door to door in that community, trying to figure out how do we make a difference? What do we do? And what I learned was this. Many people who have different political opinions on the surface want the same things when it's all said and done. Let me say that again so you understand what I'm saying. Many people who have political differences on the surface have many things in common, much more than you would think, if you can get through the political language and division that keeps us apart. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we get through that, right? So you spend time in the community, just talking to as many people as possible as we went through this campaign. And I can tell you, learn many things, but one thing that I learned without a shadow of a doubt is that we are really all in this together. So politics, in many ways, has become a zero-sum game. Either your team wins or the other team wins, right? It's like a football or a basketball game. There are no second places. And so the question I ask today as I begin to think about this, and I ask you this question, is does it have to be that way? Do politics have to be a zero-sum game, or can they look more like this? Can we have win-win situations? Can we be in a place where it's not just about you winning or just about me losing or vice versa, but what are our areas of commonality? How do we move towards mutual understanding, mutual respect, and then consequently mutual victory, right? So I want to show you guys a short film that is about a political disagreement. And I told you guys today's presentation is going to be very interactive, very media-based. I'll be talking. I got videos. I got conversation. We'll be doing Q&A. But as I share with you, my artistic work has been to create tools to teach. And so I use theater. I use film. This is a short film that I wrote and that I'm in that is about a contentious political conversation. So it's about 6 minutes long. You're all at home, so sit back, relax, get some popcorn or whatever, and we'll watch this film called That Conversation, and then we'll come back and continue our discussion.
Employees, please update your timesheets to reflect last week's holiday. Also, the eastern entrance is closed for the rest of the week due to repairs. And remember, the company barbecue is next week. So if you haven't registered, please do so. Have a great day.
I'm heading into the meeting right now. Just send over the document and I'll take a look at it later this afternoon.
All right. Hey, Mike, before the team gets here, check out the jokes I've been working on for the company barbecue. Been working on them all week. Yo mama's so fat. I took her picture at Christmas and it's still printing. Yo mama is so ugly. She tried to enter an ugly contest and they said, sorry, no professionals. And your mama is so dumb. When she took you out to Disneyland, she saw a sign that said Disneyland left. So she turned around.
Really? Lame, and lame. Except for the one about Disneyland. Actually, that was kind of funny. But don't quit your day job, okay?
When engaging with coworkers, sometimes the conversations can go from professional to friendly, from friendly to political, from political to personal. That's when things get interesting. Personal. That's when things get interesting.
Did you see the game last night? 38-35. The Packers won in overtime. The best game of the season so far.
Okay, I'm going to stop just for a second. Are you guys getting a lag on the audio on this? Like it's not happening the same?
Yeah, it's not quite lined up.
Okay, cool. All right. So I think I'm going to I don't want to make you watch the whole thing like that. So let me just see if I can fix that really quickly. And if I can't, we're just going to keep on moving. That has actually never happened before. I have used this video 100 times. And so who knows what's going on? Yeah, who knows what is going on? So anyway, but the video, just for so you understand it, is really a look at how do two people who are on polar opposite sides of the political spectrum, how do they engage in conversation? How do they have, sort of mutual respect for one another? Okay, I think I got it. So let me try it one more time, okay? And if it doesn't work, then we'll stop it there. But I think we're good. So here we go. Let's just try this one more time. I'll pick up where we left off. All right, here we go.
Lame, lame, and lame. Except for the one about Disneyland. Actually, that was kind of funny. But don't quit your day job. Okay?
When engaging with coworkers, sometimes the conversations can go from professional to friendly, from friendly to political, from political to personal. That's when things get interesting.
Did you see the game last night? 38-35. The Packers won in overtime. The best game of the season so far.
Now, remember, I was working on the report for the Hollander account last night. I was up half the night. Besides, I'm not really watching football right now, with all the controversy.
Okay, well, you missed a great game.
I actually haven't watched a game all season, and you know how much I love football.
Seriously?
Look, man, I'm just not really for making those players stand for the anthem,
All right. Well, I know we shouldn't talk politics in the office, and I'm not really an expert. I just believe that when the national anthem is playing...
Let me guess, people should respect it, right?
Of course! People have died for that flag. My dad was in the military, so we stand.
People also died for the freedom of speech. Isn't that what the Constitution's about?
True, but on your own time. When you're an employee, you do what the boss says.
Come on, Carl. You and I both know that our rights do not end the moment we walk through the company's doors.
But I don't want to see protests when I watch football, just touchdowns.
So you mean to tell me that after all these years of knowing you, you think people like me should just shut up?
I did say that's when things get interesting, didn't I? Carl and Mike have been coworkers for years. They just never had that conversation. And it's not going so well. However, there's no going back now.
I didn't mean that.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Can we avoid these talks completely? Maybe not. Inevitably, they're going to happen. The question is, what do we do now? Here are a few things that are probably not a good idea to say.
Well, if they don't like it, they can leave the country.
This is why I don't have conversations with people that look like you.
How can you guys talk about injustice? Look at OJ.
You racist!
With friends, family, and coworkers, we might want to think before we speak in these political discussions. A little diplomacy can go a long way. The old saying, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you, well, that just isn't true. Seek to understand rather than being understood. Even if you disagree with them, try to hear the other person's perspective. Take the time to engage and listen. You'd be amazed at what just might happen. Here's probably a much better way to handle this.
I really don't like what you were saying, and I fully disagree with you. But I hear your concerns.
Look, I haven't had the same experience, but I respect you and your opinion, even if we're very different.
What you said really bothers me, but I would like to know at least why you feel that way.
We can talk about the problems all day, but what do you think the solution is? Maybe we can agree on that.
While there's no perfect way to have these conversations, practicing the lost art of civility may help. We've forgotten how to talk to one another, online and in person. Abraham Lincoln famously quoted the Bible in saying, "A house divided cannot stand." Maybe exercising a little respect and humility when we talk about these controversial issues is the only thing that'll keep us together. Try it. You might just save a friendship, a life, maybe even a nation.
Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So let's talk about how communication impacts this issue of our political discussions. And, you know, one of the things that occurred in that film was we really obviously saw things from two completely different perspectives, and yet taking a deep breath, stepping back and figuring out how we can engage one another is a huge issue. You know, the narrator talks about not only the issue of face-to-face interactions being problematic, but online interactions, ladies and gentlemen, are out of control, right? If you think about it. I don't know how many of you have ever done this. I do this, unfortunately, more than I should. Engage in these conversations, these debates online where I see something I just can't resist, and you know, it sucks you in, and I don't find them to be very productive. I find them to be cathartic, but I don't find them to be very productive, right? And so how do we address that? So when we're talking to people, we must recognize that what people are getting from your communication is not just what you are saying, but it is about how you are saying it. And this is where theater comes in, right? And so being someone who does act, we spend a lot of time figuring out, playing improv games, etc., that teach us how to communicate things without words. Well, look at this. 55% of our messaging comes down to facial expressions and how our posture and our eye contact and gestures. 38% is our tone of voice and our vocal clarity and our expressiveness. And 7% of what we retain in terms of communication has to do with actually what's being said. Think about this as we engage people. Think about this as we interact around these issues. And think about the fact that the internet strips us of all of that when we communicate around these issues. And so we are navigating treacherous waters in that way. Now, I want to do a couple of little scenarios with you all and talk about language and how language matters and what it means. So just a small word change can change the meaning of an entire conversation. Two people cut you in line. One asks you, can I cut in front of you? The other says, can I cut in front of you because I am late for work? How many of you all would, and I'll do this by chat response, how many of you all would respond better to the first statement than you would to the second statement? So who here would respond if someone walked up to you and said this at work? Who here would respond better to the first statement than you would to the second statement? I'll give you guys a second to respond to that in the chat box or on our Facebook feed. You can respond to that. Now, as you are responding, I'm going to actually give you a bit of a punchline here. So I'm going to give you just a second to respond, but I'm going to give you the punchline here momentarily. So in 2012, there was a social psychologist, Helen Langer, who conducted a study in which subjects were preparing to use a copy machine. They were approached by a researcher who asked to use the machine in 3 different ways. First, they asked, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine? Then they asked, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use a Xerox machine because I have to make copies? This because word that we just saw here. The third way they asked was, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use a Xerox machine because I am in a rush? Thank you for that poll, I appreciate that. You guys can go ahead and respond to the non-because statement and then the because statement, okay? The non-because and then the because. Now, here's what happened with the subjects of this. The first line, which said, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the copy machine? In that line, using that line, subjects complied with the request 60% of the time. The second line, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the machine because I have to make copies, got a 93% compliance rate. The fourth line, may I use the machine because I'm in a rush, got a 94% compliance rate. What does this mean? The word because made the difference in the way the question was asked. People figured that if they understood the why behind the request, they were much more likely to respond. Well, if this matters in the way that we interact with one another, why would it not matter in the way that we speak to each other about these contentious and important issues that affect us all? We, ladies and gentlemen, talk recklessly, if you will, about politics. We never think about the questions of whether I use the phrase pro-life or pro-choice, whether it matters in terms of how someone responds to me. We're going to go through some of those. When we talk about immigration, and our binary choice, our binary system, if you will, we have the choice between either being for firm immigration laws and a border wall and keeping people out who don't deserve to be here, and being completely soft on crime, and we don't care about laws and we don't care about borders and that sort of thing. And oftentimes these issues are so much more complicated and they're so much more nuanced. Our political system does not give us an opportunity to engage in a nuanced way, and it does not reflect the complexity that exists in many of our minds and hearts around these issues. And we have to change that if we are going to survive as a nation. We must change this, and we must begin to dig deeper in the way that we talk about these things. A word changes the meaning, the mood, and the motivation. This, ladies and gentlemen, is very true. Now, in sales, there are words that people tell folks to use. They say that if you use these words, they will help you get sales. They study these things. Let me give you a few of them that we know. The word free, we love the word free. Who does not love the word free, right? The two most powerful words in the English language that are used in sales are sex and free, right? Sex sales and free sales. While the latter is a bit racy, or actually the former, I said sex first, the other word, free, is something that lots of brands capitalize on. In 2012, there was an experiment done at the University of Minnesota, and the experimenters found they could sell 73% more hand lotion when they added a 50% bonus, volume bonus to each purchase, instead of when that same bottle was sold at a 33% discount. So let's say it this way. So you have the choice of either getting a discount on the bottle or feeling like you're getting more lotion in the bottle. And what happened was that people were 73% more likely to go for the free lotion than they were for even the discount, because free means something to us. The word new is another word that means something to us. Actually, the appeal of the word new is actually hardwired into our brains. Novelty activates a brain's reward center. And so we find that honestly, we have a neurological reaction to something that is new. So marketers recognize this. They use the word new as much as they possibly can to get us to take brands that we may have, we may have used all the time. You put the word new on it, it changes everything in terms of how we interact. Why does this matter with politics, or how does this matter in general, right? So we also know, I'll talk about that in one second, but we also know that branding is important. And so when you look at these brands, we all know them very well. My children can tell you what the logos are for all of these companies, what their taglines are. If they have music that goes along with their logos, they know this. We know these signs very well. I actually did this experiment with a bunch of children last week, and they all knew all of these corporate logos. We know what Nike is, and everyone knows Nike's tagline. It is what? Just do it. That's right. Okay. It is just do it, right? McDonald's. I'm what? I'm loving it. These things stick with us. They stick with us. So brand loyalty is very important, but even with brand loyalty, newness actually matters. So what marketers have figured out is, how do you take brand loyalty? How do you keep that? How do you have people respond to these symbols, but then also give them something new? And that is sort of the constant battle within the marketing game to figure that out. We know this one as well. So now let's talk about some political symbols, right? What happens when you see this? There are many people that this symbol means something horrific for them. For some people, it means something horrific. For some, it means heritage. And how do we deal with this question? I am a person that my mother always taught me this, and I share with my mother a lot. And my mom has just been one of my best friends in life. We lost her just a few months ago, but I feel like his quotes keep popping back in my head. And my mother used to always tell me that, son, you've got to treat people the way that you'd want to be treated, you know, the golden rule, obviously, right? And I remember growing up, watching my mother and my father, but particularly my mother in this particular area. She worked for the University of Notre Dame when I was growing up. She was a career and placement counselor there. And when I walk around on campus with her, she would speak to everyone. She would talk to the janitors. She would talk to the deans. She would talk to the students. She would talk to the administrators, and she treated them all the same way. And so the question for this particular issue I think about, and many of the issues that we deal with in this country, is do we have enough empathy within us to recognize how there are many things in this country that are historically damaging, that are historically terrorizing. Maybe they don't affect everyone equally, but maybe if we go forward with a level of empathy in this country, that we are able to figure out ways to acknowledge other people's pain and move forward together collectively as a nation. If we don't do that, if we continue to make the, I believe, childish statements that occur throughout our politics, well, it doesn't affect me and people should get over these things and et cetera, and we live in that space, I don't know how we ever get to any healing. And I have learned this in marriage and learned this as a parent. Sometimes, guys, you know, the things that are important to me are different than what's important to people in my home. And I have a decision to make whether I'm going to have peace or I'm going to be completely right all the time. And I think that it is important as we look through all of these issues, how do we navigate these issues, having sensitivity and empathy to the feelings of others? I know this sounds very, really elementary, but can you imagine if we approached our politics in that way and what would happen in this country? Look at this, right? So we know that in Germany, this symbol is banned. You cannot walk down the street with a Nazi flag in Germany. Why? Because of what it represents. And there are a lot of efforts to try to not ignore the past, but to recognize what symbols mean. Symbols matter in politics. How do we get past them? Here's one. One of the bigger controversies that we were just talking about in the video was this question of people kneeling at the national anthem when the flag is flying and the national anthem is playing. And there's this big controversy in this country around this question. For some people, that is offensive. For other people, it is a sign of protest. How do we move forward in recognizing that there are different perspectives on this? How do we carve a space that acknowledges the strong and fierce feelings of pride that people have when they see this flag, but also the strong feelings of the need to protest and the desire to push America forward? How do we live in both of those spaces? And I think that, ladies and gentlemen, takes maturity. And I think our leaders will follow in that maturity if we as a public demand that they do. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of hashtag politics. I'm tired of binary positions. I'm tired of us versus them. We have to move towards a place in which we can find and carve out common ground on these questions. This is I find language to be funny in politics as well. You know, this issue, we throw words around in our system like socialism or whatever. And if you think about these questions, if you dig more deeply, I know this is comic and, you know, some might be offended by this and, you know, forgive me or hit me in the chat box, whatever. And I'm fine with that. But if you think about these, what they actually mean, the irony of this particular cartoon is that, you know, Americans, we talk about things like socialism, and yet so many of us live out what by definition may actually be that anyway. But we know, and I would make the argument that our media knows that words matter, buzzwords matter. They don't care about the truth. They care about whether these words actually elicit responses. And when they do elicit responses, the media, which is profit-driven, then meets its bottom line because of the anger and vitriol that is driven by these terms that, if you unpack them a little more deeply, in reality may not be as sinister as we oftentimes discuss them the way we discuss them. So we love hashtags, right? Hashtag, right? Hashtag we, hashtag love, we love it, right? We talk about issues like Black Lives Matter. We talk about defund the police. We talk about pro-life and pro-choice and what does that mean, right? So let's just go through a few of those, right? So can someone understand how, and I know I'm navigating treacherous waters here, folks, but please hear me clearly. Can someone understand the challenges that someone faces in situations of, unbelievable terror and that sort of thing around this question? And can we also understand that there are real heavy life issues here as well? And what do we do? We oftentimes do our political bidding by the slippery slope model. If I give an inch, then they'll take a mile. But can we carve out a space that protects life and still allows for some level of choice? How does that happen? Right? I'm not giving you answers, I'm giving you thoughts on this, but how does that happen? How do we get to that space? You look at this issue around gun control and the Second Amendment, you hear people talking, these folks want to take my guns, or these folks, all they want is guns. And how do we carve out a space in which we have a level of constitutional respect around this issue, and then also how do we have that in addition to having this notion that we have safety around these questions, this notion that we are not allowing for everyone to have unlimited access to weapons that have shown themselves to really damage our society heavily. Can we find common ground? This border wall question, we talked about this. We talked about this question of whether we can find common ground on immigration. And do we have to demonize people in doing that? Can someone be for border protections and still be for immigrants who are coming to the country under very difficult circumstances? How does that happen, right? We have a huge problem with race in this country, a huge problem. I find that one of the challenges with race is the language that we use. The words black and white in the English language are actually polar opposite terms. I don't know if you understood that. But the word black, literally, if you go look at a dictionary right now, means negative, wicked, evil, guilty, soiled, dirty. The word white literally means morally superior, innocent, free from blemish. This is what this means. And so we use these words to describe human beings. How on earth do we think that that terminology would not matter in the way that we treat one another? Using the words black and white to define race, by the way, are erroneous, right? So there are no black people or white people in the world. There are brown people and peach people, is what my kids call people, by the way, right? They are used inconsistently. We don't necessarily use these color terms for other groups. We don't say, a red man shot a blue man today and a purple woman reported it. We use this just at these two particular ethnic groups. And also the word black is pejorative, as we just talked about, and the word white signifies some level of moral superiority. Well, I think we've got to begin to start to question the words that come out of our mouths if we want to create a society that works for all people. I think that ethnic identity is much more complicated. I think we all, in many ways, are very, very similar. We're all mutts in some way, shape, or form. Right? We are all in some way mixed with various ethnic groups. My wife just did the Ancestry.com, her DNA study, and she found all of these different groups in her lineage. That to me is important. I think it's very important. I think that when we look at this, for instance, President Obama, if you look at what happened with him when he was elected, he became the first Black president, but President Obama is as European as he was African. And in our binary system, even that was not discussed. And I think we missed an opportunity. I think had we said we have a president that represents both slave and slave owner, there may have been more healing that would have occurred. Now, I don't know if that's the case for sure, But I think that our limited understanding of race, which is based on a historic and erroneous one-drop law that was passed. One of the first places to do that was 1923 in the state of Virginia, that passed a Racial Integrity Act that suggested that, you know, one drop of blood made someone black of African ancestry. I think that nuance would have helped us a lot to have a place and space where we could all identify rather than being another form of division that occurred in our nation. You know, pro Packers versus pro Bears, or maybe some things don't need to be agreed upon. Maybe some things do need to be binary. You know, I'm a big football fan, so I don't know why that was in there, but yeah, I don't know that we're going to find much common ground on that one. But us versus them, right? How do we move beyond this question, this issue of us versus them? Okay. If you can think of any more, please throw them in the chat box. I threw a few political issues that are binary. I would love for you to share some, and I'll come back in the Q&A and we'll talk about those, but throw some in there that are binary, that give us only, you know, one choice versus another. You know, and I think, once again, for simplicity and expediency, we make these phrases to be in a way that I believe do not allow us for choice. You know, I will say this very clearly. I know I'm stepping on a lot of toes here talking about these things, but, you know, I would have chosen, well, I'll go ahead and say it. We get into politics here, but when you talk about issues like defund the police, I am heavily personally for reallocating resources and changing the way that we fund social services, police forces in the country. But I don't find language that suggests that we are, I find the language that we use in that to be unnecessarily contentious. I think there are ways that we can have that conversation without it being binary either. You know, is it just about defunding the police or funding the police? Or is it about a holistic package of issues and reform and changes? And maybe that does mean defunding ultimately, and maybe it doesn't, but how do we move beyond the hashtag issue? So civility, we're talking about civility. I want to tell you here that being civil is not a weakness. I'm not suggesting that civility is neutrality. I don't believe in neutrality. I believe that we all ought to be fighting for things that matter. I'm talking about how we fight. I'm talking about how we fight. All right, so I'm going to close out here with just I got one last little video here, and then I want to have a little Q&A, and we'll maybe spend about 10, 15 minutes doing that, and then we're going to be done. But we gotta make some decisions, folks. We got to talk about what we're going to do differently, what we're going to take away from this, how we, in our own sphere of influence, are going to go into our communities and our families and our homes and have these conversations differently and educate ourselves and elevate the conversation to another level. That's what I'm hoping that we take away from this time. So let's watch this quickly. And this is about 2 minutes, and then we'll move towards closing out.
Arguments can get heated. Sometimes arguments can get heated and spiral out of control.
Or how about the more than 1 billion people who aren't fanatical, who don't punch women, who just want to go to the store,
wait a second. Wait a second.
Don't do any of the things that you're saying all Muslims stereotyping.
And while we all want to win our arguments, not making an enemy in the process can be even more important, which is why today we're going to be looking at Trevor Noah and what you can learn from him about coming out of verbal scruffs not only on top, but looking cool, calm, and collected. First off, Trevor has a simple but effective habit to prevent emotions from getting too heated. His sub-communications indicate that he isn't there for a fight. To see this principle in action, take a look at this exchange from his debate with Tommy Lahren, and notice Trevor's tone of voice compared to Tommy's.
That's not fair, and that's true.
No, it is fair, Trevor, because the shooter said, point-blank shooter said he's doing this because of Black Lives Matter.
Yes, and there are many things you can say.
As people get more frustrated, they have a tendency to raise their voices and talk faster, like Tommy does here. In this case, both sides' ability to change their mind completely shuts down, and they dig into their positions to prepare for a verbal sparring match. You can tell that this is beginning to happen when both people rush to talk over one another, like here.
I saw
people and race as chocolates.
I wouldn't use that.
I'm
that color, and I wouldn't say that.
In these sorts of situations, no matter how good your point is, it's not going to be well received. So the first order of business is simply to slow things down and indicate that fighting isn't necessary. So as Trevor gains control, you can see him deliberately pause in these situations, which reduces the tension and opens the other person up to his perspective.
That color, and I wouldn't say that.
Listen, when I grew up, I believed that all people were chocolates.
A very basic but tried and true method when this starts to happen to you is simply to take a deep breath as you are about to speak. It helps to slow things down tremendously. Now, another key element that indicates Trevor isn't looking to fight is his inflection. And last week...
Okay, so I'll throw some links there, some really good videos here that I've shared that I think will help us. So here's our final slide. So what are the takeaways that we have? So, right, politics is not necessarily a zero-sum game. There are ways that we all can win, and we have to do the hard work of figuring that out, particularly on the issues that are most contentious in our society. All right, here's my hashtag. I said no hashtags today, but I'm giving you a hashtag, okay? Communication matters. It's not just about what we say, it's also about how we say what we say. And so I challenge all of us to take the time to do the hard work of saying things in a way that builds some level of trust, commonality, mutual respect. We all can make a difference. You don't have to run for president. You don't have to run for Senate. You don't have to be a political commentator to have influence when it comes to your political voice. Every one of us have people that we influence in some way, shape, or form, whether it be your friends and family on Facebook, whether it be your coworkers. And I think that as we begin to turn the tide on this, I'm a believer in the old adage, the old African proverb that each one must reach one and each one must teach one. I think we can start to do something. And I want you to understand, again, as I said before, it does not mean we do not have positions. I don't find, once again, neutrality to be all that attractive. But I do believe that there is a way to be civil in our firm positions as we push towards the things that matter to us. So let's talk about what we can do, all right? So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to just be here for a few minutes. Let's go ahead and have a little Q&A. Let's talk about what we can do in the chat box. You guys can put that there. Maybe we can have a poll for that, Catherine, that just says, name one way that you can kind of help to change the tone of our political discussion. I'm hoping that this situation does not get worse, folks. I know it can get worse. I was going to say it can't get much worse, but believe you me, it can. We once again in this country, in many ways, we're in a situation where half of the country would be just fine if the other half of the country did not exist. And I'm not suggesting that we've never had political division before, because we have. But I am particularly concerned about this time, and how do we move forward. So anyway, I'm done talking. Thank you guys so much for listening today. I do want to take any questions or comments that you may have as we close out. And thank you so much for hosting me, Catherine and the library. I am super grateful to you all for bringing me here. And so I just want to take a few moments now to have a little discussion and Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ted. If someone is on Facebook, feel free to drop a question or a comment into the comments there, and I'll go ahead and relay that over here on Zoom. Otherwise, those who are here on Zoom, you can drop comments in the chat here. You can submit questions through the Q&A, or you can raise your hand through the little tool, and I'll unmute you so you can speak. Rosalind has a comment here as far as a way to heal our political situation. She says, asking questions before making accusations, and then actually listening to the person's answer before responding.
Love it. It makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I think it's brilliant. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it seems like that would make a massive difference.
Wouldn't it though? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, something I've been thinking about quite a bit is in interactions with maybe friends or family, when someone may say something that I think, oh, I think I'm supposed to say something about that. You know, I'm not supposed to be the silent bystander that exacerbates a problem if I see it as a problem, something that they say, but then how to actually say that or address it or open that topic for conversation without alienating the other person or making them feel like they need to be defensive.
Yeah. You know, everybody has a story, right? And it's very easy to judge a book by its cover. But I am a firm believer that we have commonality no matter who we are. If you sit me in a room with anyone on this planet, we can find points of commonality. And so we have to do that. We have to do the hard work because it's easier. It's much, much, much easier to write people off. But there's another African proverb. I'm fully Proverbs tonight, but it says if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so when I think about our world, our nation, our communities, our cities, we can very easily kind of live in what I call now toxic individualism, which is a huge issue in our country particularly. But that will provide some level of benefit maybe in the short term. But if we don't figure out a way to go together further, long term, then we are in trouble. I think about, and I'll just say this quickly, and I know we got a couple other questions, but I live in Chicago. And one of the things that bothers me is the media's perception of our city. Monday morning this week, I saw these gun shooting numbers in the city. And when I think about that, I go, well, why do they choose Chicago? This is national news to do this with every week. Are there not issues in New Orleans, in Newark, in LA, in New York, in Miami? And I read comments after those kind of statements, and I hear the most horrific things that people say about the people that live there, about what needs to happen to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I see that, what it says to me is that you don't believe that these problems are all of our problems. You don't believe that we are only as strong as our weakest link. You don't believe, as Dr. King said, that we cannot continue to be a first-class nation with second-class citizens. What affects what affects one part of our country affects all of us, because at some point there's nowhere to hide or where to run. And so for me, I look at the problems in rural America, in urban America, as all of our problems. How do we collectively move us towards a place where we all do better? That to me is maturity. That to me is a long-term view. That to me is the only way that we're going to survive. If we continue to divide, as Abraham Lincoln said, we will not survive.
You mentioned doing the hard work and taking the long but more productive route. Nancy's comment was to listen and don't interrupt, as hard as that may be.
Yeah, extremely hard.
And Linda had a question here. How do you recommend having a conversation when the problem is more than a difference of opinion, but rather that the other person believes false information or conspiracy theories?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question and a very real question during this current period. I'm going to tell you that I have had some of those situations myself, and I have decided that in some of those situations that it is not worth me engaging in certain spaces. So, let's just say that I do have some people that I know who do believe in some things that I believe are not true and that kind of thing. I tend to try to still have some level of relationship with them, but I will not fight I believe what I believe to be a losing battle. And so I think that we have to pick and choose, our fights on these issues. I'm not going to try to persuade everyone of the things that I think are right. I do believe that at some point those falsehoods get to be dangerous. And I think that there is even a way to in a civil manner, present truth. And I think that, I think if you are going to engage, because I've spent hours and months and weeks, with folks like that, I find if I am going to engage them, and sometimes I don't, but if I do decide to engage them, I try to do it in a very direct, very non-attacking manner. I try not to make it personal, but I do try to share facts and let the chips fall where they may.
There are a few other comments here in the chat that I'm just going to read out for the people watching on Facebook. Sorry. Rosalind says, possibly ask them if they would be open to hearing information from other sources, then presenting some different information. Ask them why they believe what they believe, and state what you believe without vehemence. Your calm demeanor could possibly help the other person calm as well. And Gennaro, I hope I'm saying your name right. Oops. And I scrolled all the way away. Where did it go? There you are. One way to heal is to be honest in our own prejudices. I believe once you're honest in your own faults and willing to do the work, healing and communicating and understanding, and willing to do the work, then healing and communicating and understanding each other can happen.
Can I say something about that real quickly?
Yeah.
I love that. I love both statements, but I like that statement particularly because of what it says about our own prejudices, and we all have them. I think part of this work is humility. I recognize, for instance, I have conversations about race all the time. People invite me to speak about race and things like that. And, we oftentimes, people, they ask me, if I bring out sort of history and that kind of thing, are we attacking people and that sort of thing? And how do people then recognize where we are, maybe what they did not create, but what they live in? How do you deal with that? And I said, well, for me as a person of color, it's hard for me to understand why someone would not have empathy for my situation. But then I think about what it means to be a man. And I think about issues like the Me Too movement, or issues like some of the LGBTQ issues around the country. That in that way, I'm in this sort of dominant group, right? The culturally dominant group. And I don't oftentimes think about how my decisions affect these groups. I just don't. And I don't oftentimes think about how, there is this sort of kind of male-dominated culture in most spaces in the society that I benefit from at some level as a man. I did not create them, but I do benefit from them. And for me, even as a person of color, I can understand that and then have empathy and go, yeah, but, right? Yeah, but I need to step out of my own space and try to put myself in someone else's shoes. And in the same way that I can do that, other people can do that, no matter what the group is. And it does not make us weaker. It does not make us foolish. I believe it makes us gracious, mature, and I believe it moves us where we have to be. And I think every single one of us can do that. Every single one of us. And that's how we get to where we're trying to go.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you. Gail writes that you mentioned that people who appear to differ politically often want the same things. So maybe a way is to focus the conversation on what those commonalities might be. And she agrees that a calm demeanor is helpful. And Rosalind chimed in again and said that she agrees speaking about commonalities is a great way to build common ground with someone instead of division.
Yeah. If I can say something about what Rosalind just said as well, I will say, and I guess I shouldn't say this, but I will. Rosalind is a lovely person who happens to be married to me, and so I see her. Hi, honey. Thank you for joining the group. I appreciate it. But what I will say is that she's so right. I was just in rural Wisconsin earlier today. I live on the south side of Chicago. I was in rural Wisconsin earlier today. I was having a conversation. I was doing some acting work, and I was having a conversation with a woman who's in rural Wisconsin, who is of European descent, right? I was sitting at a table with her and then a Latina woman, and then who lives in the northern suburbs of the city, and then me, African American from the South Side. And we were talking about our families. And we're talking about weddings in our families and how our parents treat the oldest sibling versus the younger sibling and how we deal with our kids. And we just sat there and we laughed. We did not know each other at all. And I realized in 15 minutes, we had so many points of commonality because we're human beings. And man, if the world could do that, if we could have these, rather than having these debates, maybe we throw people in a room, we make them find 20 things that they have in common. And then before you start debating, you got to do that before we, and then we come out that way. They ask in the presidential debates, they always ask that nice question at the end, like after they beat each other up for 2 hours, they go, oh, well, can you say one good thing about your opponent, that kind of thing. Maybe we should start the debates first that way, do 30 minutes of that, and then get into the issues.
Well, thanks so much for the comments and questions. I'll give maybe 10 more seconds to,
sure.
If there's anyone else with a burning question or comment they'd like to share.
You know what? I don't know if, I'll just check Facebook real quickly for us before we close out. I may have something there.
I don't see any, at least here.
Okay, you're watching. Wonderful. Fantastic. Wonderful. Wonderful.
All right. Well, did you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say, I once again, I'm so grateful to be here. This is, I believe, one of the most important things that we can be doing. And I am grateful to all of you guys who've come and spent a Wednesday evening with us. I would love to stay in touch with you. I am on social media. I have a website. Can I give those out, Catherine? Is that okay? Or, yeah. So TedWilliamsIII.com. You can find me, Ted Williams III, on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and I'd love to continue this. And if we, I'll close out with another quote. It's not a proverb, but it's another political quote or a social quote, and it's by Margaret Mead. And I know many people know this quote because it's very famous. But it says that never doubt that a small, committed group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And I do the work that I do, educationally and otherwise, because I believe that if we can just get a few folks, they can get a few folks, and they can get a few folks, and maybe we turn the tide. And I welcome the opportunity to do that with whoever wants to do that, because our world needs it. So I'm grateful to you all for being here. And let's go and find something positive and productive to talk about in politics, rather than most of what we talk about. And let's have hope. And I think we do that, we're going to see a different world. So I'm excited about that.
Well, thank you so much for this evening and for reminding us, as Suzanne says, how to be our best. It really is a critical issue, and it's nice to have a perspective to look at it with a bit of hope, because sometimes that is hard to do. Sometimes
it is hard. It is.
Thanks to everyone in our audience tonight for tuning in. Remember, this will be recorded, so if you have anyone you'd like to share this conversation with, it'll be available through the library's Facebook page and YouTube channel. When you do leave the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a survey from Illinois Humanities, and please do take a moment to provide feedback about this program for them. And that's it from me for tonight.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Blessings to all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Night.